everyone. Welcome to the first recorded episode of 2023 of Course of Action, and it is an awesome one. We have a fantastic guest on today, Amazon best-selling author of tons of books, which we're going to talk about. But Anna Willet, am I saying it correctly? Anna Willet?
Yes, that's right.
Perfect. Amazon best-selling author. I'm going to rattle off some of these. Um, Unwelcome Guests, Small Town Nightmare, Savage Bay Nightmare. You have a horror novel named Pest, The Family Man. Amazon number one new release was Dear Neighbor, correct?
Yes.
And then you have a new one coming out called The Newlywed, which we're going to get into here in a little bit. But I have to ask you, how is it going, and how are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I'm really loving it at the moment. I'm on holidays, I'm writing. The weather's very, very hot.
Is it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty hot here. Pretty hot yesterday. It looks like it's going to be hot again today. Beautiful. Went for a swim yesterday.
See, you're in Western Australia, right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so I'm in Oklahoma. I don't know if you're familiar with the states that
I,
much.
I have never been, but I know of it.
Okay, do you know where Texas is?
Yes.
Okay, so Oklahoma's just north of that.
Oh, okay.
So
Right.
we're in, we don't get like the cold north weather, but we do get it. So we have an actual winter here. So right now it's like 41 degrees outside.
Okay. I wonder what that is in my temperature. Probably about, what would that be about?
It's cold. It's 10 degrees away from freezing.
Oh, okay, right. Yep. Oh, wow.
Yeah, I forget that we're like the only country that's in Fahrenheit. Everybody else is in Celsius, and the other you know measurement system. That United States is the only one doing it the difficult way.
Yeah, I should have looked it up so I would have known. But here, yesterday it was 37. So,
Okay, I want to say it's off like 70 something between Celsius and Fahrenheit. So it's probably like for us, that's probably like in the 90s. That's pretty hot.
yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah, yeah, close
okay.
to 100, I'd say, yeah.
So let's talk about you. Where are you from? How'd you get into writing? Just a little bit, and kind of tell us about how you grew up.
Well, I grew up in Western Australia, but you can probably tell by my accent, I'm originally from Wales in the UK. So I came over to Australia with my family when I was 6 and went to school here in WA in Perth and university. I went to Notre Dame University. And then probably about 12 years ago, I'd always written short stories and things like that. But about 12 years ago, I decided to sort of take it seriously and write a novel. And the first novel I wrote was Pest, the horror one that you mentioned.
Okay.
So I sort of wrote that and then put it aside and didn't do anything with it. And then I wrote a thriller and I sent it out to a publisher, the book folks, and they got back to me pretty quickly and they wanted it. And so I pretty much stuck with the thrillers since then.
Did you eventually release Pest, or did you just kind of keep it under the table?
No, I sort of rewrote it about, when was that? Probably about 6, 7 years ago. I rewrote it and gave it to the book folks, and they were pretty keen to publish it.
Awesome. And then
You know,
since then,
it, it must have been it must have been about 3 years ago because I one of the reasons decided to bring it out from where it had been was that it was about a sudden outbreak of a strange virus, and I thought, oh, the timing's probably pretty good for this book, with COVID and everything.
yeah, I mean, what an awesome time. It's odd because here in the States with publishing, um, I had a good friend who's a thriller author, and he does a lot of police and kind of crime. And when we were having kind of the issues here with law enforcement, and some of that was getting a lot of negative news, he was soliciting for agents, and he got a lot of good feedback on his book. Like, oh, this is a great book. We love the storyline, but you know that we cannot take this on right now. Like a crime law enforcement type of book would not go over well in the United
Wow.
States right now because of all the negativity around law enforcement that we had at the time. And I mean, literally, like, yeah, this is great, but we can't do it. And he was just crushed. But I was like, hey, man, I guess that is kind of the business. It goes in cycles, though, so don't give up. But at least you have something good, and they like
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
It's just timing, and bad timing just happens, unfortunately, and it is what it is. But yeah, having a pandemic like disease like book to come out. I mean, I also heard that during the pandemic, Michael Crichton's Outbreak book did really well.
oh, that's the old book, isn't it? It
Yeah, about the
probably took
Ebola
off again.
virus. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
think they
I
called
can
it
see
Ebola
that.
in the book. I think they called it something else. Um, but yeah, it oddly enough during the pandemic, I heard that book sold really well. Like they re-released a new print of it or something, and it did well. And I thought, well, that's strange.
Yeah, I think the stand went off again as well.
Well, that's good. So let's talk about Australia a little bit because I'm really, really interested in, you meet a lot of people who are from the bigger cities on like the east coast of
Mm,
Australia, where
yeah,
Sydney and more of the
Melbourne.
vacation and a tourist area. But you're from the west side of Australia.
Yeah,
What is it?
that's right.
What's the difference? What's like the climate difference in the two?
Um, the climate difference from Victoria would be that, we're pretty consistently hot for about 7 months a year. And in Victoria and Melbourne, it can be cold in the morning, sunny in the afternoon, and pouring with rain at night. So they always say they get all the seasons in one day. Um, yeah, it's pretty hot consistently here. The temperature in WA, it's probably not as hot as the Northern Territory, but in the eastern states, Adelaide's pretty hot, and Sydney, they all get hot, except for Tasmania doesn't really get hot. Queensland's more subtropical than we are, but and over the last, I'd say, 8 years, we're getting hotter all the time over here. A lot of the time it's over 40 degrees, 43 degrees, and you really can't go out.
Yeah, I'm looking it up now on Google and the Google Celsius to Fahrenheit. If it's 40 degrees Celsius there, it's 104 Fahrenheit here.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And we're going to work when it's 43.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah,
43. 109, almost 110. So that's
yeah.
hot. That's hot.
Building sites, usually they let them close, but the rest of us have to go.
Wow. And
Yeah,
that's not consistent though. You said that's like the hotter part of the season.
it is, but over the last few years, we've been getting more and more days like that. Like this summer is mild for us. It was 37 yesterday, and that's mild for us at this time of the year lately.
Wow. So this
And we're all
this
saying
time
to
of
each
the
other, it's not
year
too bad. It's not too hot.
this time of the year here in the States, it's winter
Yeah,
for us. So
yeah.
that's crazy that you're experiencing hot summer temperatures right now when we're experiencing, cold. That's just how big the world is. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, yeah, it is crazy. Yeah, the weather is getting very strange, for sure.
That's weird. So, is there a lot of surfing and things like that on the West Coast like there is over on the East?
Yeah, yeah, and there's some pretty big, international surf competitions here in Western Australia at Margaret River and places like that. But the coast, I live quite well, very near the beach. There's always surfies out there, windsurfing, surfies.
We call them
Yeah,
surfies.
yeah,
Okay,
surfies. Yeah,
call them surfers here. I've never been surfing, but I really want to visit Australia and New Zealand one of these days. I want to just kind of make a trip down to that part of the world and go see it because I really want to see just the beauty of it and the landscape of it. But I also want to see like, are some of the horror stories about Australia true about the big animals and deadly animals sneaking up. The snakes and big spiders and all that. Is all that stuff true, or is it just social media?
The spiders and the snakes, yeah, that part's true. And the sharks, yep, that's
Really?
all true. Yeah,
Okay, I
yeah.
figured the sharks because of where it's surrounded by the ocean, but really the spiders and snakes, that's legit.
Yeah, like in the middle of suburbia, you might not find a snake, but I mean, I've been driving and once crossed the road while I'm driving. A friend of mine works at a school that's quite near a bit of bushland, and they have so many snakes. They're always calling the guy out to come and get the snakes because, like he was telling me, they were small snakes. And so the snake guy said, okay, so you've got dugites here, which are really poisonous snakes, and they've had young. So you'll have at least 30 of these small snakes. And because they're juvenile, they're very dangerous because when they bite, they don't know how much venom to release. So they release the whole lot. And so they come in under the gaps, under the doors into the buildings. And he said the best thing to do is drop a beanbag on them.
Okay.
And I said to my friends, "So you're going to carry a beanbag around with you?"
Exactly. Yeah, because I've seen some of those. My daughter went through this phase like a year or two ago where she was watching these like 72 most deadliest animals on the Discovery Channel or something on Netflix. And she kept seeing all these animals. She's like, "We're never going to Australia, Dad. Ever. All these
Like,
animals. There's all these animals there."
it's beautiful. There are a lot of spiders. My husband's friend a couple of weeks ago was bitten by a redback spider and he went to hospital. There are a lot of spiders, particularly this time of year. I've been spraying a lot of them outside, and when we turn the aircon on after winter, we typically get spiders dropping out of it. But
Oh, oh man.
you know what I'm terrified of? Bears. The thought of bears in America terrifies me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I
Okay.
think how can you live somewhere where that huge creature could come out of the woods and kill you?
So the thing about bears is, and I'm not a bear expert, but I have done some hunting before, and I know some guys who do more mountain hunting. And the thing about bears is, if you make sure that they know you're there and that you're not posing a threat, and they can kind of like see you coming, they might not pay you any mind. But if they feel threatened or they're with their cubs, if you don't take notice of that and back out, then you're in trouble. But if you make yourself known, so a lot of guys when they go hiking in like the mountains and stuff, they'll have a bell on their belt. So when they're walking, it's just constantly making noise.
Oh,
So that
okay.
foreign noise really helps. And I lived kind of up in the mountains a couple years ago, and that was one of the big things that I learned was if you go up there hiking, obviously protective stuff. Take a weapon if you feel the need to, and wear some kind of noise maker that's consistent. So as you're walking along, you're not necessarily disturbing the wildlife, but like the bears, the mountain lions, things that are dangerous, they know you're there and you're kind of like signaling to them, like, I'm here. And just be cautious and careful and don't interrupt wildlife. Don't approach them. Don't take pictures or do anything stupid. But I mean, people do get attacked by them, sure. I mean, just like, sharks, you're in territory, you're going to get you run the
Yeah.
risk of getting attacked, but if you're smart about it. But yeah, it does happen for sure. I've actually heard of more people getting bitten by snakes than getting attacked by a bear, because
Oh, really?
sometimes the snakes here, especially like rattlesnakes here, um, they have that rattle on them to warn you, but if it's kind of last minute or you're walking right by them and they're startled, they don't have time to warn you. So they'll just strike. So they're camouflaged. You can't see them. You walk past them, you disturb them, and you're not looking at the ground when you're necessarily walking, the whole time. That's people get bit by snakes here because of that. It's so low to the ground, they can't see you coming. They're trying to hide, and not all snakes have a chance to warn you, and they will strike. Now, the good thing is that more mature snakes here, especially like rattlesnakes, They don't necessarily they have more control over their venom glands, like you mentioned earlier about the baby snakes. So it- I mean, you don't want to get bit by a rattlesnake by no means. It's one of the more deadly snakes, but yeah, it does happen.
Wow. Yeah, see, that's terrifying to me, the bears. I'll take the snakes and the spiders any day, but not the bears.
That's fair. I'm assuming you guys don't have any kind of species of bear there.
No. Koala.
Okay, yeah, koala. Okay, I didn't think about that. Yeah, but that's about
Yeah,
it. Yeah,
drop
we
bears.
have.
Some people call them drop bears.
Yeah, we have a lot of different species of bear here. Even as further south as Texas is, there are bears. And they surprisingly survive in very warm climates and find ways
Wow.
of surviving. It's really, really pretty crazy.
I mean, I think they're beautiful. I'm just
Oh yeah.
terrified of them.
Oh sure.
Hmm.
Yeah, you should definitely respect the animal because of what it's capable of doing. But yeah, it is you risk it for sure. I'm terrified of like sharks. Like I would never get into open water. Like
Oh,
it's just
really?
no, you'll never catch me in the open water. Like my wife wants to go dive with sharks and swim with dolphins one day, and I'm like, no, you'll never get me in the open water like that ever. I won't do it.
Yeah. It is a bit scary out there.
Yeah, they're massive animals. You're not supposed to be in there. You look like food. You're at just a great, the perfect biting height. Like no, I don't. I think sharks
No.
are fascinating, but I do not at all want to go into the open water and dive with sharks. I don't want to dive. Period. I don't want to scuba dive. Period. Just because you can see forever. You're down there and you can see forever. You don't know what's going to approach you. How much time are you going to have to get out of there? Like, oh, that spooks
Yeah.
me.
Snorkeling is like WA is a beautiful place for snorkeling. It's absolutely gorgeous down there.
Yeah,
But you sort of always like looking out of the corner of your eye when you're down. If something moves,
sure.
it's a bit spooky. Yeah. But
I,
it's beautiful.
I
It
went
is a beautiful
snorkeling
place.
one time. We went to the Bahamas years ago, and we went snorkeling. But we went snorkeling with like a big group of people, and then like three other boats came up with the groups of people. And it's the first time I had snorkeled. So I was just trying to float on top of the water and keep my snorkel up there and figure out how to breathe without soaking in and sucking in half of the ocean into my lungs. But it was still pretty fun. Like I got to go down a little ways and come back up once I figured it out, and then it was over. But there's so many people around that I wasn't as nervous about it. We were right next to a
Yeah.
coral reef, and the instructor was down there diving and pointing stuff out, so we still got to see it. I just wasn't very good at it, but I think that's about as far as I'd go. Like some of these guys, like on the Discovery Channel and the TV that you see them, diving deep to go like explore caves and
Oh
stuff.
no,
Oh no,
no,
you'll never catch me doing
no,
that. You couldn't pay me
no. There's
enough money
too
to
much
do
out
that.
there. There's a
Yeah.
lot out there.
Oh no, no. So
But you
let's
should
talk
definitely
about.
come to Australia. I
Yeah.
think you'd enjoy it. It's
Okay.
beautiful, and New Zealand. It's absolutely gorgeous
Yeah,
there.
I want to go to New Zealand really bad. So we've talked about doing some traveling here in a couple of years when our kids are a little more grown, and kind of fend for themselves. And we have a bucket list of a couple different places to go. And my wife wants to go see England and London and all that. And I kind of want to go to Scotland, but we both have been like, oh, New Zealand would be an awesome place to go just to get away. It looks so
Yeah, it
beautiful. And
is.
then
It's beautiful, and they're very friendly as well. The Kiwis are very friendly people.
we had a basketball player here in Oklahoma on a professional basketball team by the name of Steven Adams, and he was from New Zealand. And he was just the
Oh,
most polite guy
right.
in the world. Like was just a fantastic guy. Like when they traded him and he went to another team, I was just so mad. But I mean, he was a nice guy, so I believe it. I believe it 100% that the
Yeah,
New Zealanders are probably just amazing people.
yeah, they are. They're very friendly. It doesn't look so much like Australia, but it feels like you're still in Australia because they'll even take Australian money there when you're there. And they're also welcoming and nice. And it's like Australia, but not.
Okay. Okay. So let's talk about you and your writing. How did you first kind of get into writing? You said your first book was Pest, and you wrote some short stories. But when did you first put pen to paper and say, "I'm going to be a writer. I'm going to be an author"?
Even when I was in primary school, I used to write short stories for my own enjoyment in my own time. But then, you get married and you have kids and you're studying and you're working. So it's sort of something I put on hold. And then, probably about 10, 12 years ago, I had double knee surgery and I was at home for a long time. So I thought, oh, I might just try and write a short story. And then I got back into it and it really got me hooked. And I thought, no, I'm going to write a novel and I'll take it seriously.
And then that's when Pest came along.
Yeah, that's when I wrote Pest. And it took me quite a long time to write the first one, but then the second one happened a lot quicker. And as I say, that got picked up by the first publisher I sent it to. So from there on, I've written at least two every year since then, sometimes
Wow.
three.
So what is it like writing 2 to 3 books a year? Because I'm struggling to get through one. And
Is
you're
this
writing
your
two
first
to
one?
three. That's amazing.
Um, Look, it's something I'm used to doing, and I do it almost every day. And it's always there in the back of my mind, and things come to me, and then I'll go off and write. And I probably prefer evenings, late afternoons, evenings for writing, but it's just something I do every day. And I think I'd be a little bit lost without it if I didn't have that going all the time.
Okay. Okay. So the workload is manageable to crank out 2 to 3 books a year for you. Do you ever worry about oversaturation of with 2 to 3 books, or what is the kind of the market like there by putting out 2 to 3 books a year?
My market's mostly in the UK and America.
Okay.
Yeah, it seems to work. A lot of my books are standalone, so you sort of really need to write more
Hmm.
standalone to keep that going.
Sure.
At the moment, Newlywed is part of a series that I've been writing, so that I've slowed down a little bit to two books a year with that because the police procedurals take me quite a bit longer than
Hmm.
the other types of thrillers. Like some of my other thrillers are domestic noir, action, suspense thrillers. So going to the crime procedural thriller, it takes me longer because I do a lot more research.
What's the research like? Knowing your audience is in the UK and the United States, what's the research like for you to try to have to, you know, research what is going to make sense in those two markets from Australia?
Yeah, yeah, it's easier for the UK because the Australian justice system and police system and everything is very, very similar because, of course, ours is based on theirs.
Right.
Um, for the American market, I think it's quite different in that we have, one police force for the whole of Western Australia and one police commissioner. And so the laws are the same in every part of Western Australia and the police force is the same. So I think it's different for them, for American readers in that way. But also, I think it's probably interesting to read about how it's done in a country that's so completely different. But
Yeah.
I still feel like it's important that I have to be quite accurate about what I'm writing about. And I'm lucky that I know an ex police detective very well. And so I run a lot of things past him. I send him emails. I talk to him about it and I say, is this authentic? What would they do in this situation? Is this the language they would use? What would they do about a warrant for that? So I'm lucky I have that as well.
Okay, yeah, it always helps to have someone that that can connect you back to kind of what you're writing with. That's something that I've learned going to some of the big conferences here and talking to some other authors like yourself, and just saying, how do you connect with something that you have no idea about? And that's
Mm,
probably the biggest thing is find people who do. And
yeah.
by doing this podcast, I've I've reached out to so many people. Now I know people in the CIA or former
Wow.
CIA, intelligence. I was military myself, so I have a lot of military connections. Um, but I've met people in law enforcement and in different parts of the government who have done contracting work over in like Afghanistan. So, I have some of those multicultural contexts. Now I know you. If I ever have something to do with Australia, I know who I'm calling.
Are you
So
looking for something on Perth?
so it's that's been a big thing is having those contacts and never being afraid to pick up the phone or send an email saying, hey, can you read this or can you check this out or does this make sense to you? But yeah, that's interesting how um, writing for different cultures. I never really thought about that. But if you're writing here, how do you make it make sense? Or maybe you don't make it make sense, and the reader just understands, oh, this is
Yeah.
more of a UK type of thing, and they roll with it. Because I know I've read some international books that I was like, I don't know what this agency is that they just mentioned, but I have a feeling, that it's something to do with law enforcement or intelligence or whatever it is, and you just kind of keep rolling into it.
Yeah. I mean, there are a few things that I've had to change. A few, for example, it's just small things in Perth and in the UK as well. If you went somewhere, a school, a police station, you would call it the car park. But I've had to change it to parking lot because I know the implication is different if I use the term car park.
Mm,
So my
okay.
publisher has, I have to consistently call it parking lot, which is something we would never do here.
Mm-mm.
It's
Okay.
just little things.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And
Little
my
things like
publisher's
that.
in, yeah, my publisher's in London. And so oftentimes he'll come back and say, I don't know what this thing is that you're talking about, and I can't find it on the internet. And, I'll have to say, oh, it's a type of chocolate bar that's exclusive to Australia. And, it's little things like that.
Okay. Okay. So, Amazon best-selling author. You've had some really great
Yeah,
success. We mentioned them earlier on Unwelcome
thank you.
Guests, Small Town Nightmare, Savage Bay Nightmare, the horror novel Pest, The Family Man, a number one new release in Dear Neighbor. But
Yeah,
now you have the new book, and it's
yes,
probably going to be out by the time this is released. Um, but it's called The Newlywed, and I'm going to put it up here on
yes.
the screen so you can chat about it. But let's talk about The Newlywed, the cold case mysteries number three. So, what is, without giving it away, let's talk about what the book is about a little bit.
Okay, so the book is really about a woman named Jane Wilson. So it begins with her, and she's newly married, and she's traveling with her husband, Richard, to a little town that's north of Perth to meet his twin brother for the first time. And Jane disappears without a trace. They enter the town, and Jane disappears, and it becomes one of those great unsolved mysteries. And so the husband obviously is the first suspect. But as time goes on, the case is never solved. And so then 7 years later, we go to the cold case with Veronica Pope, Detective Inspector Veronica Pope, and her team at the Special Crime Squad investigating what actually happened to Jane Wilson.
Okay, so what did you do kind of in preparation for this one? This is a cold case number, or the cold case mysteries number three.
Hmm.
Um, what was it like now that you've done one, two, and it's time to kind of, how do you keep it fresh?
Well, each one of those books, not the woman behind her, but the family man and the newlywed, I take a little bit, a tiny little bit from a famous unsolved crime or solved crime in Western Australia. And it's just that little bit of it I use, and then I take it in my own direction.
Mm, okay, okay. Let me ask you this: what draws you to the mystery and thriller series with cold case and things like that? What kind of draws you to that?
Well, I'm fascinated by true crime. I watch podcasts. I watch a lot of true crime programs. I've read a lot about it, and I've always been really interested in it. Even when I was a teenager, I was fascinated by the whole thing. Um, when I was in school, a friend, well, a classmate, she was a friend, but she was a classmate, was abducted and vanished. And it was a huge, one of the biggest cases here in Western Australia ever. And so, yeah, that kind of, I think when I was 14, that kind of was what triggered me over into this fascination. And so she remained missing for 9 years before her body was discovered.
Wow.
And yeah, and yeah, I think that got me fascinated with the true crime thing. And also, I've always been a fan of things that are a little bit dark, a little bit creepy, a little bit edgy. I prefer that. I'm not a feel good movie sort of person
That's
or
fair.
a feel good book. Yeah,
That's fair.
yeah.
I love true crime as well. Have you heard of the
Mm.
Murder with My Husband podcast?
Can you say that again?
The Murder with My Husband podcast.
No, no,
Okay.
I haven't.
You need to look it up. Murder with My Husband. It's just young couple who the wife is obsessed with true crime. She loves it. Her husband cannot stand it. So they did a podcast where she sits there and she tells him about a true case, and she does all the research and all the details, and she sits there and she tells him about it and films his reactions. So he doesn't like true crime, but he's sitting there while she's feeding him the story, and he's like, "Oh my god, what are they gonna do?" Like, it's great, and it's exploded here in the United States. You got to look it up, "Murder with My
Wow.
Husband," and
Murder with My Husband.
yeah, you'll probably find it on YouTube and all that. But yeah, huge podcast. We listen to it all the time because it's just so interesting. I mean, they take real cases or unsolved cases, or kind of heinous cases where somebody was brutally murdered or whatever, and they talk about it. But they also do a really really good job of kind of honoring the victim a little,
Mhm.
in a way
Mm.
that they're not just using the podcast to get likes and shares and views and all that, but in a way of saying like this person's story kind of deserves to be told, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of horrific things that have happened, and but it's a really good podcast. You would love it 100%.
It sounds like my kind of thing because I do like reaction podcasts and things like I like people's reactions to things they've never seen before, and I do love true crime. So it seems like the marriage of the two things I really enjoy.
Yeah, you'd like it. Murder with My Husband. It is good
Wow, I'm
stuff.
going to give that a look.
Yeah, definitely, it's good stuff because it's right up your alley in true crime, and we watch true crime all the time on all the streaming services that we have here,
Yeah,
Netflix and Hulu and all that. And I can't get enough of it. I've kind of dipped into a little bit of some ideas of true crime stories writing, um, and just kind of tossed it around. I don't know if I ever get there. If I just kind of like the enjoyment of it, but I really like John Grisham. He's a huge
yes,
true crime. You've heard of him. Love
yeah, oh
John
yeah,
Grisham. Love him, and I really admire those kind of books because it takes a lot to talk about some of those things, especially when it gets into some of the more sensitive subjects. But that's some of this stuff is true things, like you said. You take a little bit of something
yeah,
true, and then you run with it to build your story. So, um,
yeah.
how did the let's talk about the Newlywed again. How did the idea for the Newlywed come about? When did you kind of get that idea and say, I have my idea for this one?
Um, it's probably over a year ago. I got the idea for it, and like I say, it's influenced by a very famous case here in Western Australia of a wife that went missing, but she was found. She'd been murdered, and no one has ever been charged with her murder. And so that kind of, I've always been very interested in that case. I know a lot of Western Australians are, and I've thought about it a lot. And then the fictional town of Seabreak, where the Newlywed takes place, it's based on a real town or a few towns in that area. And I've been there a number of times on holiday. And so just that setting with it so coastal and so windy and, being small, Yeah, it was sort of like it came together with the idea I had for this woman to go missing.
So it comes out here in January, right?
Yeah, January 10th.
January 10th. Um, what did what was it like kind of moving into a new series? You know, you got these the cold case mysteries. Um, you know, you write 2 to 3 books a year and you kind of bounce back and forth. What do you do as an author to kind of maintain your vision when you're having to maybe kind of bounce back and forth, or you're writing something, you go, ooh, I just got an idea that applies to something way over here. How do you kind of keep it on the narrow?
Yeah, that happens to me a lot. I have a lot of ideas, and usually by the time I'm three-quarters of the way through a book, I've got a burning idea on the back burner that I have to keep on the back burner and put somewhere with all the other burning ideas. So it gets hard for me to focus at three-quarters of the way through because I've always got so many other things that I want to turn my attention to. But on the other hand, when I get to about 35, 40,000 words, I can't stop thinking about it. And I'll think, oh, I'll do a little bit of writing this afternoon and I'll go do something else. I'll need to go back. There's something, write some more. And then as it's building, I'm pretty much can't stop writing.
You're invested.
Yeah. But at the same time, in that period of time, I'm very confused. If I go to the shops, I can't find my car, or I'm trying to get in someone else's car. I can't remember words like door and things like that because so much of my mind is very far away.
Okay. That's a tough place to be in.
Scary. Luckily, it happens every time, so I know it's not dementia. I know it's the writing.
Yeah, exactly. That would be horrible. Okay, one last big question, and I've been trying to ask authors this a lot more often lately. Is do you look at the reviews on Amazon and of different retailers of your books, or do you ignore them?
No, I look at them. Yeah. I'm very interested to find out what people think of the book, if they like the book, if they don't like the book. I know it can be a bit crushing when you get horrible reviews, but normally I'm fine with bad reviews. It's sort of like, okay, well that's good. It adds validity to the good ones. You can tell they're not all written by my friends and family because it's
Sure,
sprinkled with, yeah. And it's not for everyone. You've got to understand as a writer that your books are just not for everyone.
absolutely. Yeah, you're gonna write something that somebody disagrees with or doesn't like, or they're
Yeah,
going to pick up your books for the first time to check you out, and they're just going to say it's not for me. Um, and something
yeah,
I used to tell some of my friends. My friends were in a lot of music production, and they were creating, writing a lot of songs, and they're like, people aren't going to like this, and I was like, yeah, of course they aren't. There's going to be tons of people who don't like it.
yeah.
And you know what? The average human being, if they have something nice to say, might say something. So, and then the average human being that has something bad to say probably won't. It's those small percentage of people who just feel like they need to be mad at the world who will vocally
Yes,
go out there and try to hurt somebody. Like, what
yes.
good does your review do by jumping on Amazon and bashing a book and saying how much you
Yeah.
hated it? What good does it do for you or anybody else in the world? Not that people
No,
shouldn't express their opinion, but really,
yeah,
if you don't have something nice to say, then shut your mouth.
exactly. I never write negative reviews for books
Oh, me neither.
because I feel like people have poured their heart and soul into it,
Yes.
and I'm not going to step on their dreams. If I don't can't think of something nice to say, I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah.
But I don't mind if someone says, it wasn't for me or it didn't go where I wanted it to go.
Sure.
In fact, I can even laugh about it. But when people tell outright lies in their reviews,
Oh yeah.
destructive lies, that's the only time I get a little bit upset.
Oh yeah. Or they give you like a 1-star review because the shipping wasn't very good. It came in broken.
Yeah,
Like that's not the author's fault. That is
No.
not the author's fault. That is Amazon or whoever's fault, or
Yeah,
even UPS or the delivery driver. That's their fault. Don't knock the
exactly.
author for that. I hate it when people do that.
I
Got a
do
couple of
too.
friends that got some negative reviews on their books because they're like literally in the comment they're blaming the delivery driver almost by name, and they gave me a
And
one
so
star
the
review. And it's like people
oh,
don't realize what that does for authors nowadays, especially with all the algorithms and stuff. Like these different platforms push out advertisement to help them sell products, including books, but they won't do it if you have negative reviews. So you're
no,
not helping anything by, I mean, I only look at reviews on things. If it's something that I'm questioning. Um,
yeah,
household products and certain things. I'm not necessarily looking at deep down reviews like on books. Like if it's got several
yeah,
good reviews and people are saying they like it, I'm gonna give it a chance. But if I'm looking for something like a household cleaner to get like a really tough stain out, I'm scrolling deep through the
yeah.
reviews to see like did this really work? Did people have any problems with it? What are the plus and minuses? Buying a new kitchen appliance, something like that. But
Precisely. Yeah,
but book reviews, if you didn't like it,
yeah.
then just don't like it. Don't
And
go on
and
there
the
and judge
people
people.
that leave a one-star review because they've heard about your book and would never read it, and say in the review, "I'm leaving one star because I would never read this book." I can still laugh about those. It's I had a bad experience where someone wrote a review and said that I'd spent 4 pages describing animal cruelty on a dog, and I hadn't done that in the book. I'm a dog lover. I'd said, oh, my dog looked over. I'd said in the book that someone had mutilated a dog, but I hadn't described it in any way at all. And then someone wrote that I spent 4 pages describing it, and it really hurt me. And yeah, that as an animal lover, and I'm involved in a lot of animal charities. That was how they got me.
Yeah. So last thing, the Newlywed comes out here in January 2023. People should go pick it up. Great book. If you like true crime, like true crime podcasts, um, uh, and you like that genre, this is for you. As well as some of the other books that we've mentioned that will be in the show notes, so people will be able to check them out. The last big question I have for you is, where can they find more about you? Social media, websites, all that good stuff.
Okay, so I have a website, so you can find me. If just type in Anna Willet, and you'll find my website. Obviously, I'm on Amazon, but I'm also on BookBub, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and Goodreads, of course. But yeah, if you can go over to Instagram if you want to see all the quirky things that go on in my life, as well as writing books, because there's a lot of other things I put on there, but a lot of pictures of my dog and things I cook and things like that, and my books. But yeah, so you can find me on all those places.
Excellent. And go pick up, or go pre-order or order a copy of The Newlywed, and then also check out Unwelcome Guests, Small Town Nightmare, Savage Bay Nightmare, horror novel Pest, The Family Man, and of course that Amazon #1 release, Dear Neighbor. This
Yeah.
was Anna Willet, and thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate you, and best of luck in those high temps there in Australia.